with blue, light blue, red, dark blue, brown, and we have green too for timing. Why do we do it this way? Counter people told us that it was so difficult when they had to go back and get a gasket off the counter in the warehouse because the way they stack them was this way. They couldn't see anything. So now they can put all valve cover gaskets that are brown together, and they can put all of the intake, exhaust, and plenum gaskets that are blue together, and all the oil pan gaskets together, and then the head gaskets they can put together. So now they have a location they can go to. But this was a request from our customer, and we met that request in order to fulfill their need to make it easier for them. Our headsets, just like our timing belt sets, they're going to be a bill of material on the outside. We'll tell you what it fits. We'll give you the engine. We'll tell you what's in the set. This is probably the one piece that we put in a box because of the multiple components, but if you open up this box, it's all in a package. So that way it's protected as well. The one thing that we do is we follow OE. We like to benchmark them to make sure that we put the right set together per the original equipment. The one thing that we'll do different in this set, we actually add the fuel injector O-ring and grommets because they had to be removed in order to get the intake off. Just do a little bit, add it, make sure that we don't have any premature leaks after they go through all of that work to get that done. I talked about our valve cover gasket sets where we have grommets. Well, we sell grommets separately. We also sell spark plug tube seals separately. Again, it could be that because they're rubber on the gasket, they might not need a gasket, but they do need a spark plug tube seal. So let's go ahead and make sure that we can just sell those to you, and then the grommets as well. We take a particular care when we do engine seals. Let's see if we can get a real close-up on the inside of this. You're going to see marks on the inside of this seal. These are flow marks. And we want those flow marks to be the opposite of the rotation of the crankshaft. Because when oil comes up to that shaft and that seal, you want it to be thrown back out into the engine, not out of the engine. So that's why you go with reverse marks. We make sure of that on all engine seals. So we've covered our internal engine parts, we've covered timing, we've covered gaskets. Let's talk about filters. We talked about the OVM file, the sample parts library. Here is a sample that we purchased in 1998. Notice that's the filter, the brackets. In the year 2000, we had a supersession. This was the superseded part number. Anytime there's a supersession, we're out buying another sample because we got to know what happened and why. In this particular instance, they got rid of the bracket. The bracket doesn't fail. Don't need the bracket. Just sell the filter. So that's how what we're going to sell you is the filter. So I want you to pay particular attention to this filter, and you see these ridges. There's one here, there's one here, and you'll also see the same ridges on the filter. And it comes over here, and there's one here. Here's the filter without the bracket. See the ridges? There's a reason for that. It's got to fit in that bracket that I just showed you. Where those ridges are, there's a reason for the ridge in the location. It's because it has to fit here. This is where it needs to fit so it fits properly on the vehicle. Our filter is going to come with those ridges. And they follow suit. It's done by the application. Again, application specific, a single part number. I could sell you any filter. I could sell it without the ridges and probably have multiple applications, but that's not the Beck Arnley program. It's specific to that application. Same thing with this Honda application, or Honda and Acura. Here's your original part. These have indentations, and that's because the bracket on the vehicle has indentations to accept these indentations so it fits properly where it needs to. Also, wrench flats. This is to help the installer remove it because they use banjo bolt fittings and they're very, very, very tight. You need that leverage to take this off, and also to install the replacement. So what do? We're going to give you the same indentations, and we're going to give you the wrench flats. We're also going to make sure that we match the bracketry. so that it actually is identical on the bracketry because of the way these fit. They're steel fuel lines today. They're not flexible, so they fit properly where they need to fit. And I'll give you copper washers for top and bottom plus the bleeder valve. So I bought an oil filter, or we bought an oil filter for an Audi. Here it is. It's got the Audi emblem. It actually told us who made it and gave us their part number, which was an easy fix because we knew who it was. And so we went and bought it. So now we're actually able to supply the exact same filter with the O-ring necessary for that repair. It's a good match, and there's confidence in this too, because now the installer knows he's putting the right part on the car. Additional thing that we'll do, like on the timing belts, is that we will give you a reminder sticker for the windshield. That the shop can put their name, they can list the part number for the filter and the oil and the date and the mileage, all for the next repair or the next service interval. Speaking of fuel filters, we've seen on some applications today where they say the fuel filter is not serviceable. Not true. We actually have 23 part numbers where this filter, not available from original equipment, is available from Beck Arnley. All you have to do is get through the access hole in the trunk or the back seat, take the cover off the gas tank, and you can replace this filter now. This is actually considered non-serviceable at the OE level. We have 23 part numbers today, and we're expanding that coverage as we can. We're only doing it on the applications where it's easy access. So if you go to our website, we actually have a product bulletin that's on our website. You can go in and you can look at any ones that are out there for print. You can print them off, and we'll tell you the story behind these filters, and we'll give you the application for it as well. We have 23 part numbers today, and it's growing, and we want to be sure that we actually tell you about these filters because they're not available from original equipment, so a lot of people don't know that we have them, but we need to tell people and educate people. Also, in our filtration line, we carry air filters and we carry cabin air filters, and we have a Volvo cabin air filter application that requires 2 different filters depending upon the type of air quality system that particular Volvo has. But the problem you run into is that on this particular car there's 2 slots in that air filter housing, and a lot of people think they need to put 2 filters in there, and that's not true. You need 1 filter. It just depends upon the application. So we put a bulletin together on that as well, listing the applications. When you look up one of these applications on our website and you go to the part number and you click on it, it'll come up and show you that there's a bulletin available for it, and it'll explain the reasoning behind this. So we want to be sure, because if you put both filters in there, you could do other damage to the heating AC system. And lastly, because we know cabin filters are one of those that are misunderstood lines, even though we've had them for a number of years, a lot of people just still don't know that they have them and the need to replace them. So what we did was we put together a bulletin. We show you the new filter, and then we went ahead and showed you a dirty filter and what captures in there. We actually took another step. We said, you know what? It's not just capturing the dirt and debris in the filter, but it's actually keeping this evaporator unit inside the vehicle clean. And that's a critical issue as well. So it's not just clean air, but it's also a clean system. And so we explain that to you in this bulletin. And it's just a matter of education, and that's what we try to do. Speaking about filters still, I get a phone call, and this happens sometimes where we'll get a phone call. Customer says, hey, I just lost a sale on this oil filter because you're $1 more than the guy down the street. First question, who's the guy down the street? What's the application? Let us check everything out and get back to you. Because what we're going to do is we're going to go buy that part. And on filters, especially oil, we're going to cut that filter in half. And we're going to find out exactly what's on the inside, because it's what you can't see that always tells the story. It's the details, as we call it. So I did. We went and bought that filter, took it apart. This is our filter. This is our competitor's filter. Quite a bit of cost savings can be had when you think about the fact of almost 3/8 of an inch less paper. And if you're making hundreds of thousands of these, because it's a popular application, you can see where they can charge a little bit less money. But also pay attention to the fact of the pleats. Look how tight these pleats are versus the width between these pleats. 10 less pleats versus what we offer. Your less filtration, it's just not going to the length that you need to in order to put protection on a vehicle today, and that's what we're not going to do. We're going to give you the best. We actually went a little bit further, and we started checking spring pressure because of the anti-flowback valve, and we found that there was less spring pressure on our competitors' parts. So you can see the corners that they cut in order to sell it to you for $1 cheaper. So be aware, quality is in the product of the beholder, so let's just make sure that we look, because it's what you can't see that always tells the story. And we're going to follow that up for you at Beck Arnley. Went to Nissan, bought a transmission filter. This is all I got was a transmission filter. I had to ask for the O-ring that goes on the valve body for installation. I had to ask for the gasket. Everything was separate, just like this valve cover gasket on the Honda. Everything was separate. So what do? We put together a kit. Makes it a lot easier for the counter person, makes it a lot easier for the installer and the shop owner, get what they need in one box. We're going to give you the O-ring that goes on that filter to make sure it fits in the valve body properly, no leaks. Perfect fit. We're also going to give you a gasket. We do a little bit differently on these gaskets for this. Normally they're cork. Well, we go ahead and put MBR rubber, the same material that you'll find on timing belts. As you can tell, I've crimpled this up pretty good. I can hold this for quite a while, release it, and still it'll lay flat. We made the bolt holes smaller. Remember I talked about enhancements? Make the whole bolt hole smaller to help the technician for installation. It works perfectly. Now you can lay this gasket on the pan, put a couple bolts in there in place. The gasket stays in place during installation, and it also helps the tech for the installation purpose. And with that, I hope that we've given you enough detail for you to see exactly what we've done on gaskets and filtration to show you the amount of detail that we go into to make sure that we give the right part for the application, that it's a proper fit, performance-wise, and also, let's follow it again. Application specific, we're looking for the enhancements, and we're also going to make sure that we can do those necessary things to make sure the vehicle doesn't come back because of a bad part. We're not going to do that to the installer or the shop owner.